Good afternoon and welcome to the Success Showcase. I am your co-host, Chip Janiszewski, and this is the first time I ever got to start a meeting, and that's because our normal co-host today is now a new published author, and we're going to talk all about his book. It's Eric Lopkin. How you doing today, Eric?
Doing fantastic. How are you, Chip?
Doing great. Sitting here waiting for a little tropical storm tomorrow, but it's summertime and it's August and it's the season, so hopefully we'll get through this. But it's really, really exciting that you have this new book, The Businetiks Way, out. And I know that you've had the Businetiks basically way of doing business and training and so on and so forth for a long, long time. But this is finally putting everything together. And I went through the book, and it's really, really a wonderful, interesting book that people can really just take away. And you kind of use that as a textbook. I mean, you're going to read about a whole lot of different things, but I think you're going to be putting sticky notes on different pages that pertain to you. So, Eric, why don't you just give us an overview of this book and how you came up with Businetiks in the first place, and then we can kind of dig into it a little bit.
Well, we came up with the Businetics system because we wanted something that we could scale, something that would be appropriate for a solopreneur, but also for a small, medium-sized company, a department, a larger team. We wanted something that everybody could identify with and see how they can make their business and their lives better. And when we were looking at management techniques, we found that most of them were great on process, great on communications. They all fell short in one key factor, though. They all forgot about the fact that there's a person at the core of this that has to implement. And if the person isn't, working at peak performance, then the processes aren't going to.
Yeah, and the way that this book is put together, basically you have three people who are at a conference, and one person has been to this Businetiks seminar before. And basically what it's talking about is there are seven elements to mindset, which is really, really important, which is working on yourself. And they're focus, operations, communications, innovation, education, thinking is a martial art, which is that, and then succeeding as an entrepreneur, and then improvement. And then there's also the team within the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur has to have his team, and he can't be everything to everybody, but it includes the artist, the architect, the supervisor who's a facilitator, you have the builder, and then the kid. So as far as entrepreneurs go, we always talk about everybody being their own entrepreneur because you're in charge of yourself. But why don't we touch on the entrepreneur side of things first, and then we can get into the elements. So
yeah, the team within was really about defining what an entrepreneur is. And in doing research to create the Businetiks Way, we realized that a lot of people decided that an entrepreneur was something all by itself. And, if you were somebody who was doing a job and just wanted to do a job, you couldn't be an entrepreneur. And we felt that wasn't true. The entrepreneur is actually the total of what we ended up calling the team within. And it's 5 aspects of your personality. And these 5 aspects combine to form the entrepreneur. And as you started to say, that's the artist, the architect, the supervisor, the builder, and the kid. And just to go through those, really quickly, the artist is the creator. This is the part of you that has the big ideas. The architect is the detail-oriented part. That's the one that looks at what the artist creates and goes, okay, so how can we make this happen? How can we make this real? The supervisor is literally that. If you spend too much time as the artist, no work gets done. If you spend too much time as the architect, you get bogged down in the details and never complete it. So the supervisor is the part of you that has to balance all of the other parts. Now, the builder is the part of you that takes the artist vision, takes the details that the architect has put together, and actually makes everything happen. And again, without that part of you, you'll have fantastic dreams, but they'll never become reality. And then the final version is the final aspect of the team is the kid. And we were very specific about this to say the kid and not the child, because the child has implications of immaturity. The kid is about loving what you do, it's about finding the enjoyment in everything. So,
Yeah,
those five aspects form the entrepreneur.
yeah, it's a wonderful way to put things together. Getting back to the kid, I mean, those of you who are parents, as your kids grow up, uh, the question that they ask you most when they don't agree with you or they don't understand is the question why. Kids are always curious, and
Yep.
that's what they grow up on. And the bottom line is it's fun being a parent and it's fun being a kid to explore that. And we've talked about this all the time, but if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. You should be doing something else. So the kid is a very, very important part. But laying this out as far as the artist coming up with the idea, having the inspiration to get things done, and then the architect as far as laying out the plans, the supervisor making sure everybody gets done, and then you have the builder who basically puts it all together, and then the kid who's constantly keeping all of the older people on their toes just by asking why. It's a really fantastic system. And the seven elements that you put together as far as people goes, I mean, they touch the different uh, components of the team. But mindset, you and I talk about this all the time, but that really is, as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing is to have a positive mindset when you're getting into this. And you talk about two different mindsets in here, which is the fixed mindset that things simply are as they are. I've described this as the land of Saneville, just going day to day, just living in whatever the world gives you. And then you have the growth mindset. So talk about the growth mindset because that's what this is all about.
Well, the growth mindset says you are at your starting point. The fixed mindset is really this is what is and nothing can change. The growth mindset, you're at the starting point and you can grow as far as you want. And that's important because when you believe you can grow, you can. You educate yourself, learn new skills, learn about new things, explore new opportunities. That's what the growth mindset really is. And in the book, we actually talk about some of the science behind mindset in terms of how the brain works and the neurology. And having a fixed or a growth mindset actually has a profound effect on your brain. And we've all seen, as people get older, they do things a little slower, maybe they don't catch on as quickly. But if you have a growth mindset and you're constantly looking to grow, learning, doing new things, those activities are actually exercise for your brain. So, the same way when you exercise your body, you keep it healthy, you keep it younger, you keep it going. Growth mindset and the activities that you follow because of that growth mindset actually have that same effect on your brain.
Yeah, you coined the phrase in there. It's kind of like an operating system for your mind, the self concept here. And you talk about things, don't be delusional, be extraordinary. Uh, Talking about gratitude, being thankful for what's going on, being an authentic leader, which is basically just leading by doing. You talk about facilitating. You also talk about conquering fears and converting fears to a call to action. And the bottom line is there's nothing that feels better once you do that. And you also talk about things like dealing with workplace stress and a morning routine to get started off on the right way. So a lot of this stuff is it's not rocket science, but it's the way that things need to be, and it's laid out really, really beautifully because you got to start with the positive growth mindset to make everything else work.
Yeah, nothing in the book is terribly difficult. And in fact, bits and pieces of it we've talked about for years, other authors have talked about. But what we really did with the Businetiks Way is essentially put it all together in a user manual so that you can follow this, learn all of the parts, and then you're ready to put it into action in your life. That's one of the big things we found when people go to motivational talks. They walk in, they don't know what to expect, but they're looking forward to it. And by the end of the talk, they're keyed up, they're ready to go. They want to take on the world. And then they go home, they go to sleep, they wake up the next morning, and they've got no idea how to activate what they learned at that meeting. So this is sort of a user manual. This is how you can go forward.
Yeah, that's great. And the next step obviously is focus. And you have three questions in there that you have to ask yourself. What do you like to do? What do you do best? And what is your value to your company or your customer as a person? Which are three wonderful questions where if you're not focused and you ask yourself that, it's automatically going to set you into focus. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think the best way to think of that is actually like a Venn diagram. Each of those questions is one circle. Where all three circles overlap, that's the place you want to be focusing. You want to do something that you enjoy. Now, a lot of people take this the wrong way and they go, well, that's something I don't like. I'm never going to do that. And that's not quite right either. You have to find aspects of what you're doing that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be the entire thing, but you want to know what you actually enjoy, what makes you happy, and find something that helps fulfill that. And then there's, what you're good at. I may love playing saxophone, but if I put a saxophone to my lips and it sounds like a screeching cat, that's not something I'm ever going to make money at. It's not something that's really going to end up making me happy in the long run. And it's certainly not going to make anybody else happy. And then you have to ask yourself, what value do you provide? Because that's really the key to everything we do is providing value to other people. So if you can find something that you're good at, that you enjoy, and that provides value, that center of the Venn diagram is your sweet spot. You focus on that. That's your key to success. That's going to take you where you want to go.
And basically, whatever else you need is in the rest of your team. So uh, the next one is operations, which is basically the definition is just getting things done. And you talked about the 5 points of operations, which number one is providing a roadmap to your goals and then simplifying your tasks, breaking them down, making the tasks replicable, increasing quality, and then eliminating waste. And this is where you start putting together checklists or flow charts and so on and so forth to track things going on. And part of this you came up with as far as your time management tool that you came out with a couple of years ago.
Yes, we included a lot of this in the time management tool we created. The operations part of this is the core of, again, getting things done. When you look at systems like Lean, Kaizen, Six Sigma, this is where they all focus. It's about getting the most done with the least effort, the least resources, and the least waste. So you want to build efficiencies. You want to get things done quickly, simply. And again, the reason you want things replicable. I've actually gotten the question from small business owners. where when I've explained this to them and explained, that you want this to be replicable, they go, but why? If other people can do it, then they don't need me. And I said, well, yes, but do you ever want to take a vacation? Do you ever want to, go away, retire perhaps? If the core of your business is you, there's no value to the business once you're gone. So you can't sell it. You can't keep it going when you're not there. So you want other people to be able to replicate what you're doing. And that's where, operations manuals come in, checklists come in, where when there's a specific task to be done, people can pick up the checklist, pick up the operations manual and go, oh, okay, do this, 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 this. And you've got a high product or service at the end of it.
Yeah, and the bottom line, I mean, we talk about writing up the franchise model for your business, and that's what we're talking about. And the more time you
Yes.
put in upfront doing this, the more efficient your operations are going to run. And yeah, you can run your business from the beach or anything else because you have the same systems in there. Because defining things with checklists gives people, number one, a way to do things, but it also is accountability because the checklist is right there. And you, as a manager at the beach, all you have to do to run your business is call the manager and go down that checklist for accountability purposes. It really, I put things in simple terms, but that's really what it's meant to do.
Yes, and doing even just simple checklists works so well. The Mayo Clinic actually instituted checklists for every patient and found they dropped their per patient cost and improved the quality of the healthcare they were providing.
Wow. That's pretty neat. And obviously, part of this, putting checklists together and so on and so forth, it parlays right into the next topic, which is communications. And you emphasize that the one thing that'll stop people from buying from you is poor communications, and that's with your clients. That's inside of your operations. And you talk about a lot of different aspects of communication. So why don't you give us an overview of the most important ones? Because this is a pretty heavy chapter that's got a lot of tips in there for you.
There's a lot to put into communications because it's so important. Communications at its most basic is transferring an idea from one person to another. Now, that can be done through writing, that can be done through song, through art, but we focus on, business tools, email, video chat, phone calls. And we've talked about this on the show. Each of these has strengths and weaknesses. And you have to be aware of those strengths and weaknesses to make sure that your intention is what gets communicated. And there's a section in the book where we talk about the commander's intent. And this is something in the military that when plans are put together, the folks on the soldiers on the ground have to know the commander's intent because again there's a military saying no plan survives contact with the enemy, and when they have to change the plan on the ground they have to be sure they know what the commander's intent was because that's the one part that can't change. So getting your information across is crucial. And something, it's almost become a buzzword. It's used so often now. But it's very important to be transparent. When you're transparent with suppliers, customers, employees, when they all feel they're part of the process, not a result of it or on the outside of it, the product is better, the service is better. And again, the more you communicate with your employees and make them feel like they're owners of the company, then the more they're going to communicate with your customers and the better service they're going to get. And communications is wrapped up in all of it. We tried to focus on basics, on principles, because the fact of the matter is, in the time that we were researching and writing this book, social media changed dramatically. Video conferencing changed dramatically. So, what we wanted the book to focus on were principles that weren't going to change, no matter how the technology did.
Yeah, and as I said, this chapter has all of the what ifs in there. Some of them may be appropriate for your business and some of them may not be, but it covers all the different ways to communicate with the client, with your staff on the inside. So again, I mean, that's really a chapter that's you're going to be using a lot as your user manual. And then the next chapter is innovation, which is the creativity. Again, it's the kid asking the what ifs and the whys and so on and so forth. So talk a little bit about innovation.
Yeah, innovation is really one of the keys to making large jumps ahead. But again, people tend to think of innovation in terms of technology. And while technology certainly helps in innovation, it's more about the techniques of innovation that move things forward. And the low tech example I always give of innovation is the Reese's peanut butter cup, where somebody had the idea, let's put peanut butter and chocolate together, and it huge seller. It's been around for 100 years or so. When that came out, that was a major innovation. The chocolate chip cookie, when that came out, blew people away. And the key to innovation is actually very simple. It's taking two things that you don't necessarily think will go together and seeing what happens when you put them together. And the other part of innovation is actually getting frustrated. When you find something that frustrates you, figure out a better way to do it. Figure out something that will unfrustrate you. And that innovation can push things forward. So it's those innovation techniques and keeping yourself able to innovate more than relying on technology that makes innovation so important.
Yeah, you put a phrase in there, question something that you have taken for granted. And then obviously when the gun's to your head, it says scarcity leads to innovation. So obviously, if you plan for this and you're analyzing this as part of your business, it's going to help out a lot. This also helps you deal with all the what ifs that come up.
Absolutely. I mean, especially scarcity. We've all run into situations where we just didn't have the resources we would need for a project, or even just having the resources we thought we had. So, being able to do the same thing with fewer resources, that's a method of innovation.
Oh yeah, and in these days of COVID, basically neither you and I can go out face to face with clients, but we're spending all kinds of time on Zoom and using all kinds of things that weren't even around a few years ago and innovating into that.
Yep.
And a lot of people like me had never used it, even though I had the account for a long time. And then faced with the scarcity of physical people that I can talk to, this was absolutely perfect. So I mean, it's a great example of innovation from scarcity. So
It is.
so so that, and after we go through the innovation, obviously the next chapter is evaluation. Business and what you're doing is a constant process. So you don't just say I got it and it's going to be like this forever. You got to keep evaluating, and then the next chapter after that is improving. So let's talk a little bit about evaluating and improving.
Yeah, evaluation is so important. And it's the part that people tend to forget about, or don't necessarily evaluate the right things. An example of that is interacting with customers on Facebook. most people, even today, evaluate their Facebook work by how many likes they get. Well, if you've gotten, 200 likes, but none of those likes translated into any business, then they're not really valuable, are they?
Yep.
So
Perhaps you got
you have
a little bit of innovation.
right, you have to be able to go deeper into analytics for that. And I mean, that's just one example of a metric. You have to figure out what metrics are important to you and what really measure what you're doing. And we talk about financial metrics, especially because let's face it, if the money's not coming in, you need to be able to know. And we talk about cash flow because this is a metric that so many entrepreneurs forget about. They look at the cost of goods, they look at the cost of the money they're making from sales, and they go, "Wait a minute, I don't understand. We're making money. Why don't we have any money?" And it's because they're not looking at when the money is going out in comparison to when the money's coming in. So cash flow is crucial because theoretically you could be very profitable, but if you're spending those profits before you actually get them, you'll be out of business before they show up.
Yeah, that's why, with me having my accounting degree all those years ago, we talked about accrual accounting, which shows really the way the business is on paper. However, cash accounting talks about when the money is in the bank. So as you're
Yep.
saying, if all of that, those quote unquote sales are sitting in accounts receivable that are averaging 90 to 120 days, your business is in a lot of trouble, even though you may have a wonderful quote unquote net worth. But you have to really look at the cash flow side of things too. So it's so important to look at things both ways. One of the oldest tools that we talk about in business planning is the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities,
Yep.
threats. And again, this chapter is really loaded with different things to look at. So obviously, after the evaluation, chapter 8 is putting it together to keep this thing improving on an ongoing basis. So let's talk about improvement.
Yeah, continuous improvement is the final element in the Businetiks way. And the thing is, your situation is always going to be changing. So you always need to be finding ways to improve what you're doing. It can be incremental, but it needs to be an improvement. And the thing is, what happens is you have competitors. And if you come out with the best widget, your competitors are going to look at it and go, okay, you know what? I can do this a little better. They're going to engineer something to do it better. And then you don't have the best widget anymore. And one of the examples I use for this is from back in the 90s. Yeah, Alta Vista was one of the first search engines.
I
It was a
remember.
great yeah, it was a great search engine, but it didn't keep improving. And so Google came along and just wiped most of the search engines out. Yahoo bought the technology from a lot of the search engines that were going out, used it to improve its search engine, and it's still around. So you have to keep improving. And the other thing is something I call, facing normality. Somebody will walk into your business and they will have a phenomenal experience and they'll tell everybody, and they'll come back and they'll have the same phenomenal experience. They'll tell a few people. They'll come back and they'll have the exact same phenomenal experience, but they won't tell anybody by this point. And they'll come back and they'll have the exact same experience, but it won't seem so phenomenal anymore. You're providing the same high level, but your customer ultimately gets used to it and expects it. So where it once wowed them, now it's just normal. So you have to keep improving and keep wowing the client.
That's great. We've covered a lot in the last half an hour, but basically what we're talking about here is the 7 elements that we just went over. We talked about the team within the entrepreneur, and as far as my takeaway, obviously we've covered a lot of things, and the book is put together in story fashion, which is great, but it has all the user manual things in there for that. So, I mean, I love the way it's put together. It's not a boring read whatsoever for those of you who out there are thinking we're just talking technical stuff. So, Eric, tell us, how do we get the book, where it is, and then you can close it out like you normally do, because I think I've got enough to facilitate.
The Businetiks Way is available in hardcover at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, your local bookstores, and anywhere finer books are carried. You can also get it as an ebook through Kindle, Nook, and the Apple iBooks platform. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.